the great thing about this job is the opportunity to meet people across the state from all walks of life, and I get out and about a lot, and in Melbourne and in the regions you meet a huge number of Victorians. You often wish you had more time to spend with people. It's just the nature of the job, but I think that's the highlight of the job. I've got a great cabinet. I think the government's very fortunate in what I think is the best cabinet we've seen in this state for a long, long time, and we all work together very well. But so I've learnt in the job, as you do in any job, and hopefully I've got better as I've gone along. There's lots of decisions we've made as a government in what I would describe as the environment, but also the economic space. And I attended the UN conference last year on climate change in Bali. I was the only state premier to do that. And I came away from there with a sense that we had to do even more in the climate change area, but do it in a way that helped our environment, but also created new jobs for Victorians. There's also the trials we're doing with carbon capture storage and brown coal and reducing emissions there. There have been other initiatives, particularly the hybrid vehicles with Toyota, which good for jobs, good for the economy, but also good for improving our environment and addressing climate change. So there's been a lot of things in that space which I think have been good for the state, good for our livability, good for our economy, and good for sustainability for our environment going forward. We've obviously made a lot of decisions in the last year on public transport. I said that would be a priority. I know that the system is congested, and I know it's packed on many lines, and that's because we are seeing the biggest population boom in our state's history. But as you know, we've put in place something like 200 extra services. There's the extra rolling stock, which we've ordered, I think, in the first few months when I was Premier. There's the early bird special before 7 a.m. in the morning, the buses from North Melbourne Station. All of these things are making improvements, but the biggest focus really around the rest of this year will be around Eddington, or Eddington Plus as I call it, because we're looking at a lot of other issues and potential improvements to the transport system that weren't raised directly in his report, because his is a report about east-west needs in particular. So by the end of the year you'll have our response to Eddington, Eddington Plus. There'll be some short-term measures, some medium-term, so 1 to 5 years, and then we'll also address some of those longer-term issues to make sure we've got the capacity in place to cater for Melbourne and Victoria's needs over the next 10, 15 and 20 years. So I know it's hard at the moment, but we've got, I think this year, 192 million people using the train system. That's 30 million more than had ever used it in the past, even the big post-war migration boom of the 1950s. So it is a big challenge. We are addressing it, and I just ask the public to be patient as some of the initiatives we've taken work their way through the system. I think the first day I was Premier was opening the new synchrotron, the Australian synchrotron at Monash University, which of course Victoria had led the way in funding and supporting that. But you think about Victoria, people, and you think about Melbourne, people compare us now with the great scientific cities of the world, cities like London and Boston. People speak now of London, Boston and Melbourne. And you think of the synchrotron, you think of the stem cell centre, you think of Bio21, you think of what we've done with the Walter and Eliza Hall, and you think most recently of our commitment to the new life sciences supercomputer. You need to give our people with the best minds, the best technology to work with. And for someone like a Nobel laureate winner, a supercomputer of that size, they can do in 5 minutes what 10 years ago would have taken them 5 months to do. I think we've done a huge amount in this space. I was really delighted that we got the announcement on the Southwest chopper, and I think everyone knows it's been an issue for a long period of time. It's been over a decade and governments haven't been able to find a solution to it. We did that. We had to step back, think laterally, think outside the square, and we've provided the extra 24-hour service for Essendon, and that means that the one in Warrnambool will be completely available for the region. And it was a great example of, to say, thinking outside the square, and I just know how well received that was in the region. But I think more recently, the announcement in Wodonga, with the Australian Rail Track Corporation, so the standardisation of the gauge there, $500 million worth of investment, and put that with what we're doing with the country freight lines, so all those gold lines identified by Tim Fisher. We've got something like $600 million now of investment going into country rail lines, and as someone who's always believed in rail and its capacity, that was a really positive announcement as well, and one that I enjoyed making. The environment is different. It's a slower world economy. Our dollar is higher. Climate change is very much an issue, and we've got this huge population boom. And so that's why our government has been a decisive government. We've made decisions, not always popular, but always, I think, the right decisions in terms of securing the long-term future of our state. And it's why I've said too, the next decade's really got to be a decade of action, because if we're to address all of these issues, it is a much more challenging environment. We are going to need to make the right decisions, decisive action, to secure the long-term prosperity and livability of the state.